You've heard of Catholic exorcisms, the ancient rituals, the Vatican-trained priests, and the terrifying cases that inspired The Exorcist. But what if I told you that exorcisms aren't just a Catholic phenomenon? What if Protestant pastors, ranging from small rural churches to massive megachurches, are performing exorcisms too? And what if these exorcisms are even more violent, unpredictable, and mysterious than their Catholic counterparts? Unlike Catholic exorcisms, which follow a strict Vatican-approved ritual, any Protestant pastor or even an average believer can attempt to cast out a demon. That means there are no official rules, no oversight, and in some cases, no limits to what can happen during an exorcism. Stay with me, because we're about to dive into a hidden world that most people don't even know exists. The Protestant Reformation and the denial of exorcisms. To understand why Protestant exorcisms are so shocking, we have to go back 500 years to the Protestant Reformation. When Martin Luther and John Calvin broke away from the Catholic Church, they rejected many of its rituals, including exorcisms. They accused Catholic priests of faking possessions to manipulate people through fear. But here's the irony. Martin Luther himself performed exorcisms. One of his most famous cases involved a possessed boy in Germany. Luther prayed over him, commanding the demon to leave in the name of Christ. The boy convulsed, let out a terrifying scream, and then suddenly returned to normal. Even stranger, Luther himself believed he was personally tormented by demons. He wrote about hearing the devil whisper in his ears at night, mocking him and trying to destroy his faith. He was so disturbed that he once threw an inkwell at the wall, believing Satan himself was in the room. Luther wasn't the only one. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, also believed in exorcisms. He documented multiple cases where people were healed from evil spirits through intense prayer. So from the very beginning, Protestantism had a strange contradiction. It rejected exorcisms in theory, but performed them in practice. The hidden age of Protestant exorcisms. As Protestantism spread, exorcisms didn't disappear, they just went underground. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Protestant pastors in Europe and America secretly performed exorcisms, but they rarely spoke about them. Admitting that they performed exorcisms would make them look too Catholic, something early Protestants wanted to avoid. But cases of violent possessions continued to surface. One of the most famous was the Watsika Wonder, 1877. A young girl named Laurence Venom suddenly claimed to be possessed by multiple spirits. She spoke in different voices, convulsed, and even remembered details of a dead girl's life. A Protestant minister was called to perform a prayer-based exorcism. After hours of intense prayer, Laurence collapsed, then stood up, perfectly fine. This was just one of many cases where Protestant pastors performed exorcisms but refused to call them exorcisms. But in the 20th century, everything changed. The rise of Evangelical and Pentecostal exorcisms. The modern Protestant exorcism movement exploded in the 20th century, especially among Pentecostal and Evangelical churches. Unlike Catholic exorcisms, which involve strict rituals and trained priests, Protestant exorcisms are raw, chaotic, and often violent. Some involve pastors physically restraining the possessed person, shaking them, or screaming commands at the demons. One of the most infamous cases is Roland Doe, 1949, the case that inspired the Exorcist movie. Most people assume this was a Catholic exorcism, but here's the twist. Before the Catholic priest arrived, a Lutheran pastor first attempted to cast out the demon. He prayed over Roland, commanding the spirit to leave, but instead of freeing him, the attacks became worse. Roland's body twisted unnaturally. Words appeared carved into his skin, and objects in the room moved on their own. Eventually, the case was handed over to Catholic exorcists, but this proves one thing. Protestant exorcisms weren't just real, they were happening behind closed doors, the deadly side of Protestant exorcisms. As Protestant exorcisms became more public, a new problem arose. Some of them were turning deadly. Unlike